Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Enam Kanvanda Maravinda Taksham Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Ako Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Andani Asa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Gaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala
जयो राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा श्याम सुंदर राधे। जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम। जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय जय। जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद। जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद। जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रील प्रभुपाद जय। श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा। श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा। बंधो मोये सावधान माते बंधो मोये सावधान माते। जहर प्रसादे बाय हे भवतोरे आजा। कृष्ण प्राप्ति होय जहाँ होय ते कृष्ण प्राप्ति होय जहाँ होय ते। गुरु मुख पद्मा वाक्य चिते ते करे ऐक्य। हरण करे ओ मने आशा। हरण करे ओ मने आशा। चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा जय प्रसादे पूरे सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश हो जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश हो जाते वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवन लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवन आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया एवे गाय गुशुक त्रिभुवन एवे गाय गुशुक त्रिभुवन श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावन प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया एवे गाय गुशुक त्रिभुवन श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावन श्रीला जय प्रभुपदा 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 श्रीला प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय 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 प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय Srila Prabhupada ki. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. के बाद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Fast. Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Semua kena tay.
Hare
Microphone, mic box rekan.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. हाँ हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Ram Ram, Hare.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Bana Chari Jamuna Tira Bana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Hari Bo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. C.C. Gornitai ki jai. C.C. Krishna Balaram ki jai. Lalita Vishaka Devi Radha Sham Sundar ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, starting a new chapter, Chapter 19, titled Swallowing the Forest Fire. There's not many purports. We'll do texts 1 through 7, but we'll begin by reading the chapter summary. Swallowing the Forest Fire. This chapter describes how Lord Krishna saved the cows and the cowherd boys from a great fire in the Manjaranya forest. One day the cowherd boys became absorbed in sporting and allowed the cows to wander into a dense forest. Suddenly a forest fire blazed up, and to escape its flames, the cows took refuge in a grove of sharp canes. When the cowherd boys missed their animals, they went searching for them, following their hoof prints and the trail of blades of grass and other plants they had trampled or had broken with their teeth. Finally, the boys found the cows and removed them from the cane forest. But by that time, the forest fire had grown strong and was threatening both the boys and the cows. Thus the cowherd boys took shelter of Sri Krishna, the master of all mystic power, who told them to close their eyes. They did so, and in a moment he had swallowed up the fierce forest fire and brought them all back to the Bandira tree mentioned in the last chapter. Seeing this wonderful display of mystic potency, the cowherd boys thought Krishna must be a demigod, and they began to praise him. Then they all returned home. Text 1. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Oh, I think what we should do is we should read the first 6 verses, and then the 7th verse we can chant call and response. Is that all right? Yes. So I'll just read this alone. I'll do my best. Krida Shakteshu Gopeshu Tadgavo Dhuracharini Svairam Charantyo Vivishush Trina Lobhena Gavaram. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami said, when the cowherd boys were completely absorbed in playing, their cows wandered far away. They hungered for more grass, and with no one to watch them, they entered a dense forest. Text 2. Ajagavo mahishyascha nirvashantyo vanadvanam ishikatavim nirvivishu krandantyo dhavatarshitaha. Translation. Passing from one part of the great forest to another, the goats, cows, and buffalo eventually entered an area overgrown with sharp canes. The heat of a nearby forest fire made them thirsty, and they cried out in distress. Text 3. Te pashyanta pashun gopa Krishna Rama Tayastada Jatanu Tapana Vitur Vichinbhanto Gavam Gatim. Translation. Not seeing the cows before them, Krishna, Rama, and their cowherd friends suddenly felt repentant for having neglected them. The boys searched all around but could not discover where they had gone. Trinais tat kurada chiner Ghoshpadher ankiter gavam margam anvagamam sarve nashta jivya vichetasha. Then the boys began tracing out the cow's path by noting their footprints and the blades of grass the cows had broken with their hooves and teeth. All the cowherd boys were in great anxiety because they had lost their source of livelihood. Text 5. Munjatavyam parashta margam krandamanam svagodanam samprapya trishita shrantas tataste sanyavartayan. Within the Munja forest, the cowherd boys finally found their valuable cows who had lost their way and were crying. Then the boys, thirsty and tired, herded the cows back onto the path back home. Ta'ahuta Bhagavata Meghaghambhiraya Gira Swanam Nam Nindanam Shrutva Pratanetu Parharshitaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead called out to the animals in a voice that resounded like a rumbling cloud. Hearing the sound of their own names, the cows were overjoyed and called out to the Lord in reply. Text 7. Tata samantad davadumaketur Tata samantad davadumaketur Yadchaya put kashya krid vanakosham Yadchaya put kashya krid vanakosham Samirita saratinol panomiker Samirita saritinol panomiker Vilelihina stira jagaman mahan Vilelihana stira jangaman mahan Tata samantad davadumaketur Yadchaya bhut kshaya kridvanakosam Samirita saritinol panomiker Vilelihana stira jangaman mahan. Please chant. Tata samanta davadumaketur Yachritya bhutchaya kridvanaki Samirita saratino banomiker Vilelihana stira jangaman mahan Tata samanta davaduma ketur Yachaya Bhukshaya Kridvana Kosham Samirita Tsariti no Bano Muker Dileli Hanastira Jangaman Mahan Tata Samanta Davaduma Ketur Yachaya Kritvanoksham Samirita Sariti no Bano Muker Vileli Hanstira Jagamamaha. Any ladies? Tata Samanta Davaduma Ketur Yachaya Bhukshaya Kridvana Kosham Samirita Sarati no Bano Muker Vileli Hanstira Jagaman Mahan Davaduma Ketur Yachaya Bhukshaya Kritvano Kasham Samirita Sariti no Bano Muker Ileli Hanstira Jangaman Mahan Tata Then Samantat On all sides Dava Dhumaketu A terrible forest fire Yachaya Suddenly Abut Appeared Kshayakrit Threatening destruction Vana Okasam For all those present in the forest Samirita Driven Sarartina By its chariot driver the wind Ulbana terrible Ulmukai with meteor-like sparks Vilelihana licking Stira Jangaman all moving and non-moving creatures Mahan very great. Translation Suddenly a great forest fire appeared on all sides, threatening to destroy all the forest creatures. Like a chariot driver, the wind swept the fire onward, and terrible sparks shot in all directions. Indeed, the great fire extended its tongues of flame toward all moving and non-moving creatures. Purport. Just as Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys were about to take their cows back home, the forest fire previously mentioned raged out of control and surrounded all of them. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulam Militam Yenam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shirta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'm very grateful, also very humbled to again have the opportunity to try to speak here, begging for the blessings, especially of all my worshipable seniors. Hare Krishna. So this story, swallowing the forest fire, somehow Krishna and Balaram, their cowherd boyfriends, maybe absorbed in play, their cows wandered off. And it's described a few things. This was a disturbance for them. They were in great anxiety. And why were they in anxiety? Is it because of the emotional relationship that they had with the cows? Maybe that also. But what it says here in Bhagavatam that I wanted to highlight, all the cowherd boys were in great anxiety because they had lost their source of livelihood. The example of Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan is to live by depending on their cows. Their source of livelihood is cows and land. We are also making an endeavor to protect cows, and that's glorious. But it may not be that we're depending on them for our livelihood. What are we depending on for our livelihood? We should consider that very carefully. But what's shown again and again in Srila Prabhupada's books is how to have a society that's godly, that's God conscious. And you can say that begins with the point of cow protection. And cow protection, again, it doesn't just mean to have some cows and protect them from harm, although of course that's an essential part of it. But the main thing is that your whole economic foundation is based on those cows. In the traditional culture of India, the traditional Vedic culture, cows were dependent on for so many reasons. For food, first of all. For food production. That's, you can say, the prime necessity. The chapati problem. How are we going to eat? The first point is, how are you producing your food? And so Krishna and Balaram, the cowherd boys, they're herding with the cows, and by those cows they're getting milk, and it doesn't exactly describe that they were doing agriculture, but it may be that their system of agriculture, I've heard like this, I'm not sure, was to graze in different places, and by the cows associating with the land in those different places, things can grow. So how are we producing our food? Who are we depending on for our food? We can ask that question very seriously. It's an important question. Food production, transportation. How are we getting from here to there? Where do we need to go? The example is that for all of their, like Srila Prabhupada, he writes, he has a very powerful comment. He says, motor car means slaughterhouse. And he explains like this, he says that if you'll see in the picture of Nanda Maharaj, when they're moving from Gokul to Vrindavan, then they're going by bullock cart. That's their means of transport. He said, no motor cars. If you have motor cars, then the bull is no longer required. And then Prabhupada says, and then you'll have to kill him, and you'll have to eat him also. So that's the horrible reality. You can say modern society engaging in cow protection as the foundation of their economy and their economic well-being. They're engaging in something like car protection. all the machines, that are essential for us to kind of survive in the modern world. It's very unfortunate because the first victim is the cow. The cow will suffer first. Even when I first came to Vrindavan, I remember when I was doing the Braj Mandal Parikram, and the devotees were always pointing out, maybe it was somewhat less prominent in those times, whenever we would see a tractor, they would say, the tractor is the great enemy, because for every tractor, so many bulls are killed. And you can there was a very great article written by one of the ministers of cow protection in our society. He wrote something like, how green is your tractor? And the question was, how much exploitation and suffering is required to maintain the modern system? Just to have a tractor, how many different metals have to be mined from the earth, and what a violent thing that is to the earth, how polluting it is. And then, the rubber that's required for the tires. And then further, the petrol that has to go into the tank. It doesn't run on grass and oats. It runs on petrol, and petrol's not a renewable resource. And like we may see in so many examples in the modern world, if you want to have your vehicle full of petrol, you may have to fight for that, and you may have to kill for that, and it may be, horrible struggles. I don't follow the news too much, but I can understand there are struggles like that going on now, like big ones. So the godly system, the divine system, is not to be overly dependent on those kinds of artificial, very rajasic, tamasic kinds of ways of economic development, but to depend on the cow. And if you'll depend on the cow, then cow protection is a necessity. You have to protect the cow. And if you don't depend on the cow, then cow protection practically becomes a pie in the sky, something like almost impossible. Because you don't really need the cow, and it's a very expensive hobby to maintain them, like that. So, Srila Prabhupada writes this. You can find a nice passage. He writes about this. One nice passage from the many similar passages in Srila Prabhupada's teachings in his book Light of the Bhagavat. He writes, Protection and grazing ground for the cows are among the essential needs for society and the welfare of people in general. The animal fat required for the human body can be well derived from cow's milk. Cow's milk is very important for human energy, and the economic development of society depends on sufficient food grains, sufficient milk, and sufficient transportation and distribution of these products. Everyone has these kinds of basic material needs. It's not that, everyone has to eat, everyone has to sleep, everyone needs clothes, everyone needs some kind of transportation, probably, mostly, that's required. Even just to get the things that you need, some transportation has to be there. So it's not that by chanting Hare Krishna, these things can just be absolutely ignored or neglected. This is also part. So the point is how to accomplish the needs of human life in a godly way, in a sattvic way. These things are described in Srila Prabhupada's books. Lord Krishna, by his personal example, taught us the importance of cow protection, which is meant not only for the Indian climate, but for all human beings all over the universe. So in case someone thinks, this is just the Indians or the Hindus, they're worshiping the cows, something like that. Someone's thinking, no, this is the standard of human civilization. Human civilization means living with the cow, working at the pace of the bull. Less intelligent people underestimate the value of cow's milk. Cow's milk is also called go-rasa, or the juice from the body of the cow. Milk is the most valuable form of go-rasa, and from milk we can prepare many important and valuable foodstuffs for the upkeep of the human body. The killing of cows by human society is one of the grossest suicidal policies, and those who are anxious to cultivate the human spirit must turn their attention first toward the question of cow protection. It's powerful. So milk, Srila Prabhupada's writing, very important. Many places Prabhupada writes that milk is important for developing finer brain tissue, for understanding spiritual subject matter. There's an amazing example Srila Prabhupada gives. At one time, there were two British men, two important British officials. They were on the bank of the Ganga, and they were having some argument. Someone owed someone money or something like that, and their case ended up in court. And the point was that they had made some agreement during a meeting on the bank of the Ganga. And so in the court, it was asked, was anybody else a witness to that discussion that was had by those two British people? And they said, no one was there. Are you sure no one was there? Oh, yeah, actually, there was a Brahmin who was there doing his puja on the bank of the Ganga. So, okay, let's call that Brahmin. So they called the Brahmin into the court, and he didn't speak any English. And they said, you're being called as a witness. Can you testify to what had been said between those two men when they were discussing? And so the Brahmin, he said, well, I don't speak any English, so I couldn't understand anything what they were saying. But then Prabhupada says, just like a tape recorder, he described, first this man made this sound and like this and like this and like this. And just by remembering the sounds without comprehension of the language, he was able to re-explain what was the conversation that had happened at that time. And based on his testimony, the court case could be solved. So that was the example of the type of genius brains that have come from the Indian civilization. And practically we can say, we may have so many other examples like that. We've heard so many stories of, great souls. I heard amongst the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, there was, one very genius boy. He was a small boy. He could memorize so many shlokas. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would give him sweets as a reward every time he learned a shloka, because he was a small boy. And he was such a humble Vaishnava, he would distribute that to the Vaishnavas. And in school, he didn't bring his textbook one day, and the teacher chastised him. He said, well, I didn't bring my textbook, but I have memorized it. And then when the teacher challenged that boy, he could recite from memory something that was there in the textbook. Everyone is astonished. Even Srila Prabhupada, I have at home one of the book. I think it's called Verses from Vedic Literature, or before it was like shlokas from Srila Prabhupada. And it's a compilation of the shlokas cited by Srila Prabhupada in his teachings. Anyway, you can see, just by hearing his lectures, how he could memorize so many shlokas. It's something phenomenal. By looking at the writings of our acharyas, you can appreciate the level of genius produced by the old Indian culture. And so anyway, so that same culture is saying, what's the secret to that, brilliance and intelligence? It's the milk. It's the milk from the protected cows. Prabhupada also writes, it's very important to recognize how wealthy and how opulent the residents of Vrindavan were just by tending to their cows and by keeping milk products like that. So Prabhupada says, the killing of cows by human society is one of the grossest suicidal policies. By killing the cow, we're killing ourselves. That's what is not understood. Krishna and Balaram are showing the example of humans in symbiotic relationship. I've read about this. In nature, there's different types of symbiotic relationships between different species. Like, I think an example is the bee with the flower. The bee is taking nectar from the flower and is also helping pollinate further the flower. So, in other words, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. The bee is getting the benefit of its food, and the flower is getting the benefit of spreading its seed, so that's one example of like a symbiotic relationship. So similarly, cows and human beings are meant to live in a type of symbiotic relationship where there's mutual benefit. The cows are meant to be protected, and the humans get so many benefits in the form of milk, in the form of power for tilling the field, for transport. The cow dung is a source of fuel. Urine can be used in so many different ways, including for medicine, like that. So by killing the cow, humanity is also killed. Certainly sattvic life is killed. And Prabhupada says it's a suicidal policy. Many places Prabhupada writes, by cow killing, then there can be pestilence. Pestilence means like disease, plagues. We all got a great lesson about that. Famine. Even now, anyway, sorry to say, in the news I don't follow so much, but even great leaders are saying food shortages are coming. This is something that's coming. We have to think very hard about this. What's the future? Who are we depending on? Food shortages are coming. Prabhupada says that's a consequence of cow slaughter. Pestilence, famine, war. War, that's another consequence of cow slaughter. So Prabhupada says suicidal policy. And those who are anxious to cultivate the human spirit must turn their attention first toward the question of cow protection. If we really want to cultivate the human spirit in society, we must have first-class intelligent men to guide the society, and to develop the finer tissues of our brains, we must assimilate vitamin values from milk. So I tried to make this point already. Everything is explained in Prabhupada's books, how to have a perfect spiritual society. And there's the different social divisions, the divisions of ashram, Everything is there. How to accomplish all the basic needs. How to accomplish, having defense. That's very important. How to have food. So on like that. We understand all these things, but it's there. And anyway, it's nice that it's in the books. How much is it manifest? Devotees worship Lord Sri Krishna by addressing him as the well-wisher of the Brahmins and the cows. The most intelligent class of men who have perfectly attained knowledge in spiritual values are called the Brahmins. No society can improve in transcendental knowledge without the guidance of such first-class men, and no brain can assimilate the subtle form of knowledge without fine brain tissues. So the ultimate goal of human life is not just sense gratification. The ultimate goal of human life is self-realization. And our hope for self-realization is to have a class of people that are Brahmins, that are highly cultured and developed in spiritual knowledge to guide the rest of the society. And how do you have Brahmins? Milk is important. Milk is important for the finer brain tissues, for spiritual intelligence. For such important brain tissues, we require a sufficient quantity of milk and milk preparations. Ultimately, we need to protect the cow to derive the highest benefit from this important animal. The protection of cows, therefore, is not merely a religious sentiment, but a means to secure the highest benefit for human society. Wow, every line is like so pregnant with meaning. The protection of cows is not merely a religious sentiment. Krishna has said, it's said in one of these verses, the Supreme Personality of Godhead called out to the animals in a voice that resounded like a rumbling cloud. So they've lost their cows, and Krishna is calling out to them like a rumbling cloud. His voice is like a rumbling cloud. Hearing the sound of their own names, so the cows had their names, Krishna is calling their names, the cows were overjoyed and called out to the Lord in reply. So definitely there's some beautiful relationship between the cows and their caretakers. Like in this beautiful painting we have in the temple room, Krishna is embracing the cows. And so that's also there. That's this beautiful system. How will you have a personal relationship calling out the names of your car and the car will call back? No, that society doesn't have that beautiful quality. They're depending on their cows for their livelihood, and they love their cows. The cows, and naturally, if you'll spend some time with cows, like every morning we're saying, please visit our Goshala. And you can feed them snacks, and you can brush them and associate with them. Actually, it's like, it will melt your heart. It's very wonderful to exchange with the cows. It's part of the natural symbiotic relationship, man and cows, and they're meant for each other. So naturally we will have affection for the cows, and naturally cows appreciate human affection. If you give them a scratch, you can understand they're enjoying the scratch. And when you stop giving the scratch, they will kind of want more. So that's Krishna's beautiful system. And maybe now more than ever, Srila Prabhupada, my understanding, he's given the 7 purposes of ISKCON. The 7 purposes of ISKCON. I marked those because I won't remember them. To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all peoples in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So the prerequisite for peace is that the cows should also be at peace. If the cows are in a peaceful condition, then humanity can be in a peaceful condition. And if the cows are in a terrible condition, humanity will also be in a terrible condition. That's God's system. So we understand what is the secret of peace, cow protection. I won't read them all. But anyway, to bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler and more natural way of life. One of the purposes of Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON society, a more natural way of life. So what is our way of life? Is it natural? How natural is it? How much are we depending on unnatural means for food, for transport, for energy? How much do we have to compromise with a non-devotional society that doesn't reflect our values and which is doing great violence? Maybe I'll leave it there if there are any comments or questions.
Very wonderful. Thank you very much. We've heard these things many times, and it's common knowledge. And what we observe in areas like Vrindavan, many other places, is that despite so much spiritual knowledge and awareness of the simple living higher thinking values, the culture of Vrindavan, cow protection, living off the land, and so on and so forth, we see a massive push in the opposite direction, even amongst the spiritual areas and spiritual communities here, many other places. We see a lot of economic development, a lot of new roads, more cars, more motorbikes, more, going in the opposite direction, despite the presence of simple instructions like this. So that's the observation we have on one side of the theory, and the other side of the reality. Like all the cows just being stuck in the middle of every land, and what's going on. This, the way it is, I'm not going to describe the ashram the way it is, everything the way it is, the reality of the situation. So why is there a disconnect between the theory and what's actually going on, especially in places like here? And what would be some of the remedies to try and fix it? That's really the next question, the natural question, which then follows on from what you were raising in class.
Yeah, thank you. What a great question. Why is it mostly theory? Well, there must be some lack in leadership. I mean, one of the first things you said, I wasn't sure I agreed with that. You said we hear these things all the time. Yes?
Assuming you're reading the books.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, definitely this is, Kali Yuga is surcharged with opposition, and because of a lack of proper leadership, it's just all going in the wrong direction, non-stop. And I guess it's our challenge, our service by Srila Prabhupada's instructions to try to reverse the course. I mean, another thing we can say is, and I think Prabhupada has said it, that if we're overly attached to the comforts, the luxuries afforded by the modern civilization, then that will be a huge obstacle to working towards an alternative. And so everyone can introspect about that also, I think. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagarisha kamaye mama janmani janmani shure bhavatad bhakti rahaitu ki tvaye. Is that all right?
You're taking on a heavy thing on your head, saying those words in the position where you're sitting right now.
I agree. I'm shy to speak, but anyway, I'm humbly trying to represent something from Prabhupada's teachings. I have no qualification. Yes, Prabhu.
I was thinking, since we are adult, our adult brain doesn't understand, teaching children would help the society. Prabhupada explained, we are not teaching to most of the children in the population. So I was thinking that teaching children would make a difference, because when they will think from the very beginning, they might take leadership and save the world that way. What is your opinion?
I think what we practically observe is that so many of our young people are forced to go take education outside, because that's their hope for satisfying their material necessity, and that's a great shame. And definitely I think that it's incumbent on our society, if we hope to make progress, to educate our own children in a way that they can contribute to a God-conscious society where also their needs will be met. Maybe we'll leave it there, just as it's 9 o'clock, unless anybody, something else. Thank you so much for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.